Welcome to Mr. Chalk's Revision Tips. In this video, we will look at the development of atomic theory, including the discovery of electrons, the plum pudding model, and the nuclear model. So in 1897, J.J. Thomson discovered the electron by experimenting with cathode ray tubes. So he demonstrated that cathode rays were negatively charged. So Thomson realized that the accepted model of an atom did not account for the negatively or positively charged particles. So in a cathode ray tube, there is a hollow glass tube. So the air in the tube is pumped out to create a vacuum. The electron gun comprises of a primary heater and a cathode. So it emits a sharp beam of electrons or cathode rays. There's some sort of deflection system. This controls the direction of the electron beam. This is achieved by an external electric or magnetic field. So cathode rays bend as they interact with these fields. At the other end, there's some sort of phosphorescent coating. So this is the final part, and it's where the rays hit, and as the rays hit it, it causes it to glow. So ideas about atoms have changed over time. Scientists have developed new atomic models as they've gathered more evidence. So John Dalton published his idea about atoms in 1803. He thought that all matter was made of tiny particles called atoms, which he imagined to be tiny spheres that could not be divided. So nearly 100 years later, after Thomson's experiments, this led him to suggest that an atom was like a plum pudding. So in this model, the atom is a positively charged ball with negative electrons embedded in it. In 1909, Ernest Rutherford designed an experiment to test the plum pudding model. In the experiment, positively charged alpha particles were fired at a thin gold foil. Most of the alpha particles went straight through the foil, but a few were scattered in different directions. So the fact that most of the alpha particles went straight through showed that most of an atom is just empty space. Because some of the alpha particles were deflected, that shows that the nucleus must be positively charged, as alike charges repel. And a few of the alpha particles were deflected back, showing that there must have been some sort of dense nucleus in the middle. So if we were looking at this question, so two scientists named Rutherford and Martinsford devised an experiment to investigate the plum pudding model. The experiment involved firing alpha particles at a thin gold sheet. So the results from this experiment caused the plum pudding model to be replaced with the new model of the atom. If we're looking at explaining why, it's because a significant amount of the alpha particles went straight through, and if the plum pudding models was correct, then less would have gone through. Some of the alpha particles were deflected backwards. Measurements could not be, or the measurements they took could not explain the plum pudding model, so the model had to be changed. And it was suggesting one reason why other scientists thought the experiment provided a valid result and a valid suggestion for the new model of an atom is because they took over 100,000 measurements. So, and Rutherford and Marston were also respected scientists. So Rutherford's atomic model became known as the nuclear model. So in the nuclear model, the protons and neutrons, which comprise nearly all the mass of the atom, are located in the nucleus at the center of the atom. The electrons are distributed around the nucleus and occupy most of the volume of the atom. So the nuclei of all atoms contain subatomic particles called protons, and we now know that they contain neutrons as well. An atom has a central nucleus that is surrounded by electron shells, and the mass of an electron is very, very small compared with a proton or a neutron. So since the nucleus contains protons and neutrons, most of the mass of the atom is concentrated in the nucleus. So we look at this. So in 1931, scientists thought that atoms contained only protons and electrons. Suggest what happened in 1932 to change the idea of this. It was the fact that the neutron was discovered. So the table gives information about particles in an atom. If we're looking at completing this table, we know that the neutron has a relative mass of 1 and no charge. Electrons have relatively no mass and a negative charge, and protons have a mass of 1 and a positive charge. If we're looking to describe the model that was used for the structure of an atom, right? If we're looking at giving examples or details of individual particles, key things that we need to talk about is that the nucleus is made of protons and neutrons. Electrons are orbiting it. Electrons are found in shells. Most of the atom is empty space. The nucleus only occupies a very small fraction of the atom. The electrons orbit relatively large distances away from the atom. And the nucleus as a whole is positively charged, whereas the electrons are negatively charged. Niels Bohr further developed Rutherford's nuclear model. He used experimental evidence to support the idea that electrons occupy particular orbits or shells around the nucleus of the atom. So in the Bohr model of the atom, electrons travel in defined circular orbits around the nucleus. So the orbits are labelled by integer, so a quantum number n. Electrons can jump from one orbit to another by emitting or absorbing energy. So the innermost shell has a maximum of 2 electrons. The next 2 electron shells have a maximum of 8 electrons. So with this model, Bohr explained how electrons could jump from one orbit to another only by emitting or absorbing energy in fixed quanta. So for example, if an electron jumps one orbit closer to the nucleus, it must emit energy equal to the difference of the energies of the 2 orbits combined.
Thanks for watching.